Selamat siang buat pengikut-pengikut yang dari negeri Belanda, dan selamat malam selamat sore untuk pengikut-pengikut yang dari Indonesia. Terima kasih telah menyediakan waktu dan mengikuti webinar ini. Saya terutama akan memberikan penghargaan kepada Hasti Tarekat yang sebagai founder of Heritage Hand-On dan organisator dari webinar seri ini. Juga saya mau berterima kasih untuk Indische Herinneringscentrum Den Haag, Lloyd Atelier, Netherlands Embassy Jakarta, Museum Bronbeek, KB Royal Library of the Netherlands, Indotrek Historisch Nieuwsblad, Rijksdienst voor het Cultureel Erfgoed Sumatra Planters Association. Ibu Hasti ini adalah dari Task Force Library City dari Indonesian Diaspora Network di the Netherlands, di mana Ibu Wiwijo adalah Task Force drivernya. Apakah Indonesian Diaspora Network the Netherlands adalah satu organisasi dari orang-orang Indonesia dan orang-orang keturunan orang Indonesia, dan kami aktif untuk menemukan negeri Belanda dan menjembatani negeri Belanda dan Indonesia. Dan juga kami adalah sebagai wadah untuk ekspertise, ide-ide, dan untuk networking. IDNNL itu termasuk banyak sekali bagian-bagiannya, seperti art and culture, healthcare, science and technology, education, dan sebagainya, dan sebagainya. Untuk lebih mengenal kami, bisa mengunjungi website kami.
Oh yeah, now we have participants from the Netherlands. Maybe you can switch into. I have some WhatsApp from the Netherlands participants that they cannot enter the Zoom.
Oh,
it must be Bu Wiwi. I have some WhatsApp on my inbox that they couldn't enter the Zoom, so that's why. Nobody from the Netherlands sites join, so probably we have to check about it, or maybe you can send to your social media about the good meeting code and meeting password. Thank you. Okay, we have Yolanda Melserts, the cultural attaché from the Netherlands Embassy in Jakarta. Please go ahead.
Okay. And yes, now I don't want to take more time of this webinar, and I will give back the screen to the moderator. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and also good evening, our friends and colleagues in Indonesia. Thank you for joining. And my name is Hasti. I'm a moderator of this webinar. And first of all, I would like to thank Pak Soedjai Kartasasmita, that I feel like my own father, my senior, whom I learned a lot, and also the team from the Museum Perkebunan Indonesia, who have tremendously helpful to organize this webinar. And the intentions of this webinar is to match the participants from the Netherlands and from Indonesia who have interest or who do conservations in the same theme. Today, the theme is about plantation history in the east coast of Sumatra. And for those, history is nobody else than Pak Soedjai Kartasasmita, that can share with us not only his knowledge but also his experience, because he involves from the history of the plantations in the east coast of Sumatra from the beginning. I would like to save time now so we can have more discussion later. I would like to welcome Pak Soedjai Kartasasmita to share with us. Thank you, Pak Soedjai.
Thank you so much. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, dames en heren, bapak-bapak dan ibu-ibu, selamat siang di Belanda. Goedemiddag. Good afternoon and good evening in Indonesia. Selamat malam. Ladies and gentlemen, before I start with my presentation, I would like to introduce myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because many people still don't know who I am. Yeah, the man with the camera. I'm a well-known photographer. In Indonesia, I'm well known as the Begawan Perkebunan. That means the high priest of the plantation industry. Amazing. I am the high priest of the plantation industry. And this was confirmed by the Minister of Agriculture when he gave me last year on Plantation Day, the 10th of December last year, recognition that I'm really the most senior expert in the plantation industry in Indonesia. Therefore, he gave me an award. And he confirmed that I'm really the Begawan, or the high priest of the plantation industry in Indonesia. Now let's go further. I would like to first inform you that I've divided my presentation in 6 parts. First, introduction, that I did that already. And then the plantation museums in Medan. There are 2 of plantation museums. And then number 3, our 3 people, this is very important indeed. Our 3 people with vision have made East Sumatra a paradise for investors. 3 visionaries. I'll talk a lot about them later. And then the importance of infrastructure. Infrastructure made East Sumatra at that time the paradise for investors. They came from all over the world. And then I'm going to tell what is happening now. After that, I'll have my closing presentation. Now, let me start with the museum. Since the early 90s, I've had a big dream to build a museum in Medan. If possible, 2 museums. It took me 6 years, to get the support of the authorities and from other stakeholders. 6 years. But there were a lot of supporters. including the Minister of Agriculture himself and other government authorities. All agreed with my proposal to have one museum or maybe two museums in Medan. So after I got a lot of support, we made a declaration emphasizing the importance of having a plantation museum in Medan. First one should be in the Indonesian Plantation Research Station complex, and the other one, if possible, in the famous Afros building close to Kesawan. Everybody agreed that it is really necessary to start with one of the museums as soon as possible. After the declaration, I went to the Dutch embassy in Jakarta. I was accompanied by Mr. Rohan, Mr. Iwan Sulaiman, and Dr. Desi Simanjuntak. We met Mrs. Ineke de Hoog there at the embassy, and we told her that we have plans to start with the museum in Medan, and it would be great if the embassy would give us their support. And Mrs. Ineke de Hoog said, sure, we would like to support you, to help you. We are going to send a famous piano player to Medan to make the inauguration more attractive. So to make a long story short, the official opening of the first museum took place on the 10th of December, 2016. It was attended by various authorities, including the governor of North Sumatra. And of course, Mrs. Ineke de Hoog, a famous Dutch piano player by the name of Christian, was with her. And the intention was that by his performance, the opening ceremony would become more attractive. And he did that, as you can see on the picture here. Thank you, Mrs. Ineke de Hoog. Look at this museum. So we gave Mrs. Ineke de Hoog and Christian the famous ulos. You can see on this picture. And you should take a look at the museum. There's an airplane and locomotive distributed by PT-2 and contributed by PT-2. Look at this, an airplane and locomotives. So everything went smoothly. And I should thank the director of the Institute of Research for Plantations in Medan for his kindness to support us with this building, old building in the complex of the research station. Now, going further, after the opening of the first museum, I did my utmost to be able to start with the second museum in the Afros building, close to Kesawan, in the center of the Medan city. Fortunately, I met Mr. Ed van Lieden. Ed van Lieden, the chairman of the Rotterdamse Lloyd Museum Foundation. And he sent us through the Dutch embassy in Jakarta 72 artifacts. 72, a large number of artifacts to make the museum more attractive. The opening ceremony took place in 2018 on the 6th of December. A lot of guests, including Professor Bunga Saragi, the previous Minister of Agriculture, the Vice Governor of North Sumatra, and other important guests. One occasion which people will always remember is that when we asked Mr. Ed van Lieden to make a welcome speech on the stage, Mrs. Josie van Lieden, his wife, and Ibu Sri Hartini accompanied him to the stage. And it was really unbelievable. Instead of making a speech, they first sang a song, Nina Bobo. Ya Bu Sri, Nina Bobo. Everybody was fascinated. How can a man like Ed van Lieden sing Nina Bobo? They were all of them were fascinated. So after his speech, everybody applauded, and even one said in a loud voice, "Hey, but the Japanese consul general who sat next to me also applauded, and he whispered into my eyes, this is fascinating. How is it possible that he can sing Nina Bobo," he said. What makes the Afros Museum more attractive is the fact that we have there a birodactyloscopy with about 1 million documents in various dossiers. This will be attractive because each document describes the CV and the well-being of each laborer in the plantations in North Sumatra. Ibu Sri is now making efforts to make the birodactyloscopy more attractive, and she received support from everybody because it's very unique. I don't think that anywhere in the world you will find such a dossier with 1 million documents. They're all in good order. So you see here, you can see the picture of the Rotterdam Lloyd ships. And then what is important here is that because of the efforts of Ibu Sri Hartini, so far 143,000 people, mostly young people, have visited the two museums. That is from December 2016 up to September this year. 143,000 people. If there is no pandemic, it could be more than that. They were coming from all over Indonesia. And I met about 140 young people coming from every part of the country at the recommendation of the Ministry of Education. Now let's go further. What is important here is that I would like to draw your attention to the fact that what all happened in East Sumatra was thanks to the great vision of three people, namely of Syed Abdullah bin Barfaki, Umar Barfaki, and then from the Sultan of Delhi. And the third one is Jacob Husninhuis. That's why we have in Museum 1 rooms named after these people, these three people, because they were great visionaries. I don't have a picture of Syed Abdullah yet, but I can show you the picture of the Sultan and of Jacob Ninhuis. I'll tell you a lot about Syed Abdullah because without Syed Abdullah, it would not have been possible to start with tobacco plantations in Tanah Delhi. Syed Abdullah was a businessman of Arab origin, and he had business in Surabaya. But because of unknown reasons, in 1861, he decided to move to the southern part of India, to start with a new business there. So he went by sailboat, but in the Strait of Malacca, a disaster struck. The sailboat capsized and sank immediately. But thank God, Syed Abdullah was able to survive. Fishermen saw his body lying on the beach there and took him then immediately to the village where he got medical treatment with local medicine. Fortunately, he recovered within a few days. And then villagers insisted him to take a walk in the surroundings. And he was amazed when he saw the various crops there, including tobacco plants with beautiful leaves. That was because of the fertile soil. being a businessman, he then thought, well, this Sultan, this part of Delhi will become a great attraction for investors. They can grow tobacco on a large scale, and they will get the benefit of big profits. That was his dream. And then he went to see the Sultan, and enthusiastically told the Sultan about his big dream. But at the same time, he saw the beautiful princesses in the palace of the Sultan. He also kept an eye on them. And then he saw one lady who was willing to marry him. So they married. This was also a strategy for him, because then his relationship with the Sultan became closer. So when he proposed to the Sultan to make a visit to Batavia to try to promote Tanah Delhi to potential investors, the Sultan immediately agreed. But in Batavia, Syed Abdullah was disappointed, felt disappointed. Why? The Dutch business people he met always scolded him. You are a liar. What do you know about tobacco? Go away. And then he went to Surabaya. There in Surabaya, he met business people, and they were more polite than the Dutch people in Jakarta, in Batavia. One of the companies even decided to send a ship to Labuan Delhi with him as a passenger, and accompanied by a planter from Lumajang, a Dutch planter, tobacco planter from Lumajang, Nienhuis, Jacobus Nienhuis. The captain of the ship received instructions: you should go further to Singapore. Maybe there is cargo there. Don't wait for these two gentlemen. When they arrived in Labuan Delhi, Syed Abdullah immediately took Nienhuis on a visit to the various villages. And Nienhuis was amazed. He saw all these tobacco plants and all the other crops. And he thought, this is marvelous. I should start as soon as possible with a project here, but I need some land. So Syed Abdullah accompanied him to see the Sultan. The Sultan agreed, and some land was allocated to Nienhuis so that he could start with a tobacco plantation. But there was one problem. Where to find the laborers? Local people didn't want to work as laborers there. orang Melayu dan orang Karo. They didn't want to work as laborers in the plantation. So he went to Penang, where he recruited a lot of people of Chinese origin, hardworking people. Because of his good management practice, he was able to produce very good tobacco leaves, which he later sent to Amsterdam. And people there were very, very amazed to see the leaves. Very good, better than the leaves they always bought from African countries. Later, cigar smokers called tobacco Deli, similar to Bordeaux wine. Bordeaux wine, which was loved by wine lovers in Europe. So starting with this story, you can see the developments, the spectacular developments in East Sumatra. I don't want to talk about that anymore because it will take too much time. But enough to say that big companies like Deli Maskapai and Senembah Maskapai became famous names. And their legacies you still can see in Tanjung Morawa and in places where they had plantations. This is a picture of one of those plantations. Now, let me go further. What was wonderful was that the business people at that time even realized the importance of building a good infrastructure system in East Sumatra and in Tanah Deli. So what they did was as follows. First, start to develop a new harbor. That's the port of Belawan, which later replaced the port of Pelabuhan Deli, which previously was used as an export harbor. And the second most important investment was the establishment of a railway system by the Deli Spoorweg Maatschappij, or DSM, as they called this company later. They started with the railway system, first connecting Medan and Belawan, and later Medan Tebing Tinggi, and from Tebing Tinggi to Rantau Rapat. And later also railway from Tebing Tinggi to Pematang Siantar. What happened after that? After the infrastructure was finished, was unbelievable. Investors from all over the world were coming to Tanah Deli and then to East Sumatra. Not only to grow tobacco, but also to grow other crops, commodities like rubber, oil palm, tea, and other crops. You won't believe me. There were all sort of nationalities in Tanah Delhi and then in East Sumatra. Apart from Dutch people, there were English people who took with them Indian laborers from India, American people, American companies, and then Swiss companies, and Belgium company, German companies, and even companies from Japan. So North Sumatra, which that's the name of East Sumatra. North Sumatra became the model of a tolerant society because in Medan, you could always see them. Different nationalities, local nationalities, especially Javanese, a lot of them, British, Dutch, Swiss, and Belgian, French, even Japanese people, a lot of them. And what was wonderful was, although there were also many religions, everything was peaceful. Everybody was tolerant. And that can become a model for societies at present, either in Indonesia or elsewhere, in other countries. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening now with all these famous plantations? First, because of urbanization, a lot of land has been allocated for other purposes. The first one was the development of a new international airport in Kuala Namu. A lot of fertile land has been made available for developing this international airport. And then a lot of land also will be used for building a second city close to Medan. It will be called Metropolitan City. And another cause is the conversion of land. In order to avoid land grabbing, many areas have been converted into oil palm, cocoa, and sugarcane plantations, so that there is not much fertile land left. That means the end of the history of the Deli Tobacco industry. Cigars factories in Europe are now looking for material from Mexico, Brazil, Florida. In Florida, you also have Sumatra tobacco, and also from Ecuador. It's a pity, really. But on the other hand, East Sumatra, North Sumatra is still an important player in the palm oil industry. You know, even before World War II, East Sumatra was well known for its high quality palm oil. East Sumatra was the biggest exporter of palm oil in the world, with export amounting to 200,000 tons a year. What about tea? Sumatra tea was well known in the past, but now tea plantations have been converted into oil palm and other crops. So there are only two plantations left with famous names, Bambutong and Tobasari. But we are still optimistic of the future of plantations. We have got the people, we have got the support of the government, and we will see another episode in the plantation industry in East Sumatra. And that was the reason why I was dreaming about creating a museum or two museums in Medan. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to thank you for your attention. Terima kasih. Dank u wel voor uw attentie. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Pak Soedjai. Would you like to to show some pictures still? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Pak Soedjai Kartasasmita, and welcome to all participants. A lot from Indonesia. It shows a lot of interest for heritage from Indonesians. Thank you very much. But also welcome to the participants represents the Netherlands. Before I open the discussions, and also I would like to welcome some participants, especially from friends from the Netherlands, who involved in cultural heritage and cooperations with Indonesia in cultural heritage field. I would like to show you my the result of the small research that I have done related to the stakeholders in the Netherlands involved in the plantation history, especially from the east coast of Sumatra. There are some experts in the participants, I know, researchers, who also can later share with us about their knowledge and their experience about this issue. But let me show you some of the institutions and organizations, institutions and individuals in Netherlands who relates to the Deli Maatschappij or the historical plantation history in the Netherlands. Let me show you. Okay, so this is what I could find from my small research. Who are individuals and organizations in the Netherlands involved in the history of the east coast of Sumatra plantations. So, and this is in 2021. And we are lucky that we have some of them as participants. For example, Ed van Leerde. Thank you, Ed, for joining us this afternoon. Maybe you can say something. But I also I send invitation to all of them, but probably they have something else. But it is also good to know about these stakeholders, just in case Indonesian plantation museums would like to cooperate in the near futures, because the intention of this webinar is actually the matchmaking of both sides doing the same thing. So, and And for the young generations and also Indonesians who there are more and more Indonesians who visit Netherlands nowadays. It's also worth doing, for example, the heritage trail related to the history of plantations of the east coast of Sumatra. For example, you can visit Sunport because the two ladies from colonial era put the food. Okay, that is the footprint of colonial cultural heritage. There is a heritage trail about planters, books, and history of the Deli. And there is still a house of Jacob Kramer, one of the founders of Deli Tobacco. And there is a former house of Madelon Zekli Lulofs, who wrote books about rubber and coolie. So, and I Film Museum in Netherlands, in Amsterdam, also has films about tobacco culture in Delhi. So it is a very fascinating to see the history from both sides. I visit Museum Nijkerk, for example, and they organize workshops about making cigar. What is cigars in Bahasa Indonesia? Cigar, or you know what I mean, like this. In Museum Nijkerk, it's a small city in the North Holland, and Margaret Leidenmeyer wrote about this book. It's about plantations in the Dutch Indies in the long 19th century. And of course, both of you, all of you knows about these books, Kuli and Rabe, who by Madelon Zekli Lulofs, who are translated already into Bahasa Indonesia, I believe. So there are a lot of stakeholders in Netherlands involved in this history. And I would like to invite our friends and colleagues from the Netherlands to share their views about this history. So may I invite the cultural attaché of the Netherlands, of the Royal Kingdom Netherlands Embassy in Jakarta.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I will unmute first because I start talking and I forget this. Thank you so much, Hasti. Thank you first for organizing these webinars. They are tremendous. I think it's very important that you organize these. So thank you for this. And this is the second time, and we again have a very interesting speaker. I would like to thank him first, Pa Soedjai. You are a tremendous master storyteller. I think I'm very glad I heard your story. My compliments for your clear expose and your excellent English, because that's also if we have to communicate and not everybody speaks Dutch, not everybody speaks Bahasa Indonesia, then we choose English, which is for both countries always quite a challenge to express what you want to say. But it was very clear. When I hear about tobacco, of course, I think of a lot of people quit smoking. So it's not only that they try to find other ways to get their products, but it's all. I think it's quite decreasing the needs of tobacco. So also, I think about a sad part of this story. I'm also glad to hear that my predecessor, one of my predecessors, Ineke de Hoog, was so kind to support your museum and to be there at the opening. And I think it's quite important because the Dutch and the Indonesians share a lot of history, a lot of different aspects of history. This is one of them. And of course, it's not always very fine or neat history, but sometimes there are really nice stories to tell. Sometimes there are painful stories to tell. Sometimes there are happy stories to tell. And it's important that we get to know all the different sides of the stories, because we come close to what really happened and what the relationship was during these ages, and how we can build a future together. So thank you again, all who worked together to establish this. The first question I had to Pak Soedjai, if I may ask a question now, is a very basic one. Why did you start 2 museums instead of 1? Was the building not big enough, or did you want to tell 2 different stories in the 2 buildings? I've never been there. I hope to visit it one day, but that's quite a naive question maybe, but for me...
Could you repeat that question?
Sorry?
Could you please repeat that question?
Yes, it's a very simple one. You started 2 museums, both in Medan, or the neighborhood of Medan. Why did you choose to have 2 different buildings for 2 museums instead of telling the whole story in 1 building? Was the building not big enough, or what was the reason for this?
Well, the major reason is the fact that Indonesian is now paying a lot of attention on the development of infrastructure in various parts of the country. So the second museum is more focused on infrastructure. That's why I asked for support from the Rotterdam Museum Foundation, infrastructure, and that was the main reason why, as I told you earlier, the main reason why East Sumatra became such an attractive place for investors, because of the excellent infrastructure. So we need to have a special museum for that. Okay. Infrastructure. The first museum is more focused on the history of the plantations. Yeah. That's why we have 3 rooms. Yeah.
Yeah.
So different focus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apart from infrastructure, also climate change. Also climate change. Yeah. And then what is shown in the second museum in the Afros building was the fact that even before people know about computers, they started to have this dactyloscopist bureau where they could find the data of various people without any with ease, with any problems, without any problems, because they were specialists there.
Yeah,
it's marvelous.
Yes. I have a good news, Yolanda Melsers, that next time you are in Medan, Pak Soedjai speak fluent Dutch, actually. Actually, he was very keen to give presentation in Dutch, but as you said, we have to use international language. But there is the director of Indonesian Plantation Museums, Ibu Sri Hartini, join us here. So maybe Ibu Sri Hartini, you can support Pak Soedjai by telling us why there are 2 Indonesian plantation museums in one city. Would you like to share with us, or maybe later?
Ibu Sri. Later maybe. Okay,
maybe later. So I would like to ask Ed van Lieren, maybe from Rotterdam Lloyd's. Thank you, by the way, Yolanda Melsert. We can always discuss further in the discussions, in the Q&A, and we really appreciate your time and your attentions to join the discussions. It is this both sides communications about our shared heritage is rather new for all of us, especially we are in Indonesia, but I think we should move on with these efforts to build understanding about the shared history. Thank you very much for your time, Yolanda. Yeah, maybe Ed, are you online? Would you like to share, because you cooperate with the Musperin, Museum Perkebunan Indonesia. If you would like to share with us, please. Sometimes we have to give a little bit of time for, yes, or while we are waiting for Ed to join us online, probably I could invite Yolanda Ezendam.
Okay, hello.
Oh, Pa Ed, are you ready?
Hello. Hello.
Okay, Yolanda maybe later. Ed van Leeuwen, would you like to share what did you cooperate with the Musperin, and maybe you can share a little bit of stories with us here.
Okay, I will try to.
Yeah.
First thing, do you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What I already wrote to Soedjai is that I'm very glad to hear his voice again. It is 2 years ago. Yes, I think so. It's 2 years ago, long time ago. Well, I I heard about your Nina Bobo story. Well, everything is getting back 2 years ago, and I'm afraid that was the last one, the last trip because of age and something. I'm not so young as you are, Soedjai. Why did I do that? And that, with that, I mean sending artifacts to Medan, and that's because of the connection between the plantation business, as I can say it, and the Rotterdam Lloyd. That's the whole story. It started in the 30s. About the 30s, and our first goal was let's say it in other words. I started in Batavia, Jakarta, with the first project, and that was because of the building, the former Rotterdam Lloyd building, was so nicely, how do you call that? Restored. Yes, thank you, Hasti. Restored not only 70 years before that time, but exactly restored to the colonial details, and that was a reason for me to make the other way around. I don't know, to make some kind of a project of it, and that was a rather success, but. Medan was the second try of our project, and the problem there was that in the former building of the Rotterdam Lloyd, there was an assurance company, and they were willing to cooperate, but they couldn't have people inside the building because it was not open for public. And that's the moment how do you call it? You Hasti came in with a proposal to change the buildings to the plantation industry, and well, that was a very good idea. So the Medan project is a fact, indeed, in 2 buildings, and Mr. Soedjai explained why. Well, I'm looking back to a great time, and I'm a little bit verdrietig, how do you call it? Sad. I'm a little bit sad. It's the end of those two projects, and the reason of that is, of course, my age and medical, little bit medical problems.
Thank you, Ed. For those, for other participants, Ed van der Leeuwen represents the foundations of the Rotterdam's Lloyds, one of the main players of transportation by sea during the Dutch Indies period. So they led some collections of the Rotterdam Lloyds to show in Musperin in Medan. So thank you, Ed van Leeuwen, and I hope that you will visit the museums again and probably work more on cooperations or plantation history in the near future. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Rafi.
yes, and
Thank you.
yeah, we also have Yolanda Ezendam, work for the Ministry of Education and Cultures of the Netherlands government, who in charge for international cooperations in cultural heritage. Although you never been to the museums in Medan, but probably you could share with us your impressions about this history, Yolanda Ezendam, if you would like to. It would be nice to get to know each other. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hasti, for inviting me to say something on the very interesting lecture of Mr. Soedjai. Unfortunately, I missed part of it because of a telephone call that came in. My excuse for that. I was wondering about the Lloyd building that Ed was talking about. Is that the building where the Ministry for Human Development and Cultural Affairs is now in, or is that another building?
I could answer right away if you don't mind. The first, the Plantation building, and the second is the building for the Algemene Vereniging for Planters ter Oostkust van Sumatra. Dus both of them are plantations company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering. Well, Hasti, I think that since we have our training series in Indonesia on museum affairs and collections, it might be interesting to also involve this very specific part of the Indonesian history, because this is a very special topic, a very special subject, and until now we haven't worked on that yet. What do you think of that?
Yes, yes, of course. I think we could invite the Indonesian plantation museums to join the trainings, and hopefully they will join. So Ibu Soehartini, the director, is here now. So she listens to our conversations, and hopefully she will send participants for the next training. Yeah, thank you, Yolanda, for allocating your time and energy to join this webinar to share. So at least you learn to learn more Indonesians interested in this shared heritage. If I may invite Dirk Bijskool, I apologize, Dirk, if I pronounce your name wrongly. Dirk is a historian, live in Medan, so he's a very expert about Medan, also about Netherlands. Dirk, would you like to say something?
Yeah, good evening, good afternoon in Holland. I'm in Medan.
Good afternoon.
I met Mr. Soedjai 2 times, once at the opening of the museum, and the next time during the television shooting for a program about what was it? It was Achter de Dijken 2 years ago, and then that's for that program they did make recordings in the second plantation building of the AVRO's, Algemene Vereniging Rubber Ondernemers Oostkust van Sumatra, where they keep the 500,000 fingerprints, the Dactyloscopy Institute, which was so important for the registration of the coolies. So yes, I think Mr. Soedjai, he made a great effort to realize those 2 museums so that people will know the story, and that the buildings are preserved and that they are safe now. That is very, very important, so that they will not be demolished. I think this is very valuable that he did it. And I also remember that Mr. Soedjai worked with Goedhart, Mr. Goedhart, Mr. Soedjai. I remember that you talked about him. So Goedhart, he was the last. Of mine. Yes, he was the last director of the HVA, and I did read recently. I did read the book of Goedhart, and he also mentioned you as one of his colleagues. Goedhart, he was the last director. He for the Handelsvereniging Amsterdam. So yeah, that's what I say. I think it's very good that the museum have been realized. It is very valuable and very important. So that because so much has already gone in Medan, but these 2 buildings are preserved, made in the same period, 1918, 1990. One for the secretary of the AVRO's, the other for the research institution of the AVRO's. And the AVRO's was all the plantations outside the tobacco. So that was for the palm oil, for the tea, the rubber, and the other research station was for the tobacco, especially for the tobacco, and one for the other crops. And the 2 buildings of the AVRO's are now main buildings of the AVRO's, are museum, which is very, very valuable. I very much appreciate that Mr. Soedjai has realized this. This is what I want to say.
Dirk, would you like to mention about who you are? Because what you did, your research is also very interesting, because there are many participants who are new to you.
Yeah, I did a PhD on the Chinese of Medan, and so the role and the contribution of the Chinese businessmen in period 1890-1942, because it was started by the plantation, was started by the Dutch, but very important was the Chinese who came as workers for the plantations, and the other group were the Chinese businessmen, and there were several who came more important for the plantations than the Dutch, which was the main name was Chong Afi, and as he was personally, he owned 20 plantations, but he was crucial for the development of Medan. So it was the contribution of these Chinese people, what they did for the building, infrastructure, the construction of the houses, of hospitals, of everything, schools, what they did do for Medan. That is what what my research was about mainly.
Yeah.
But of course, it has been in the setting of the plantations, because Medan was a plantation. It was the result of the tobacco, later rubber palm oil plantations.
Yeah.
So if there was not a plantations, Medan would not have been like now. But besides the coolies who worked at the plantations, and later the Javanese, first Indian, Chinese, later Javanese, it was the businessmen who did the infrastructure, who worked important for the infrastructure. So that is what's my research about.
Yes, it's also, I think, important to mention that the history of plantations related not only to Medan, but to the Strait Malacca with Singapore, Malaysia, and neighboring countries in general also. So it is a regional shared history. But since you are one of the few experts who are familiar with the Netherlands and Indonesia, what do you think about the shared history of plantations being interpreted in 2021 now? Because we are 20 years later, and I think you are the one who could share with us your impressions, how the young Indonesians now interpret the shared history according to your observations as an expert.
Yeah, the shared history, it has positive and negative sides, because the negative side is the labor conditions of the coolies. So, and it's now a lot of attention paid to this, because there was the penal sanction. It was a kind of a contract which did bind the coolies to the plantations, and that now is a lot of attention paid to this, and it's good that people know about it. But yeah, it was at that time it was done, and what can you say? It is the controversial aspect of the plantation industry of the east coast of Sumatra, because it was the only place in the Netherlands Indies where they had this penal sanction, this contract which did bind the coolies for 3 years at the plantation. It was nowhere else, and yeah, that was one of the cornerstones of the plantation industry, and it is a controversial. Interesting is that, for instance, the Chonga Phi, he owned him personally 20 plantations. He did not have this penal sanction on him. So in that way, he had a more social and more human system for his workers. He did not contribute to the penal sanction. For the rest, yeah, I mean, I think it's very important that the people realize why Medan is Medan, and that's why it's so important that you have these museums, so that they will not be more demolished. Because if you demolish the existing architecture, the character of the city will be gone, and then yeah, what do you have? You have only a new city. So if the physical heritage of Medan is the old buildings, and that is very important. So otherwise, the character and the soul of the city will be lost, and that is so important for the preservation. Now, you have done yourself the heritage. You yourself did start Bareng Warisan Sumatra, the Heritage Society, to try to preserve. And now, yeah, the awareness is so important, so that people know why Medan is Medan, and that is why you have to know, to create an awareness of this history, so that people will appreciate it, and that it will not be gone. That's what I can say.
Thank you, Dirk, and you are always welcome later to jump into discussions in the next stage. Thank you very much for your input. And talking about interpretations of the younger generations from Medan and from Indonesia, we have some friends now from Sumatra Heritage Trust who involved in restorations of the buildings of the museums. Suhardi, Cindy, Ibu Isnen, probably you could share with us about what you do with the buildings in terms of restorations, in terms of architectures. Would you, one of you, share with us, please?
Yes, Bu Hasti. Thank you.
please introduce yourself first and then share with us what you do to restore the buildings.
Yes, thank you, Wahasti. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rishindi Indira. I am the Executive Director of Beranda Warisan Sumatra or Sumatra Heritage Trust. Thank you, Bu Hasti, for this opportunity. Assalamualaikum, Pak Soedjai. Apa kabar, Pak? How are you?
Baik, waalaikumsalam.
It's been a long time, Pak Soedjai. Before the pandemic that we have met in Museum Perkebunan in Medan. Yes, Bu Hasti, we are very proud that we are trusted by Museum Perkebunan or Musperin to assist them in order to restore one of the museum, which is the museum number 2, if I may say that, in the city center of Medan, which is in Kesawan. What we've done is together with Musperin, with a lot of support from Pak Soedjai and also a lot of support from the Indonesian Nusantara Plantations holding, and we want to, maybe if I might say this on behalf of Bu Sri as the director of a museum, we want to make this museum open for every age. We want to make the museum accessible not only for the one who interested in museum, but also for young people, young generation, millennial generations, Z generations, and everyone. What we do, we change in order to adaptive reuse the building as a cafe, as a creative hub, and we add an infrastructure, a lift, an elevator for Pak Soedjai to climb to 4th floor, because we think that the building has a beautiful clock tower, which is only accessible for those who still have strong feet. So with the help of Nusantara Plantations holding, Pak Abdul Ghani, we managed to build an elevator in the building. And also we want to make this museum not only accessible in the daylight, but also in the evening. And we trying too hard with our expert, Ibu Isnan Fitri and Pak Sohardi, to assist the restorations of the building, because it is a very old building, more than 100 years, especially today. This year is 102 years old. So we have to be very careful with the construction. So yeah, Bu Hasti, I hope our work in order to preserve the old buildings, it is useful for Medan City, and especially it will be the door to knowledge about plantations, because I think the next step is to make this museum accessible for people to see the dactyloscopy that is in the building. I think that's what we have done until now for the last 2 years.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Cindy is a landscape architect graduated from Wageningen, Pak Soedjai. So one of the alumni of the University of Wageningen. So, and thank you, Cindy. And I think the most important is the younger generations of Indonesia involved in the restoration. And I would like also to share with all participants that the initiative to conserve the history of plantation become to museums is the result of public-private partnerships between states company in the plantations. In Indonesia, we call it PTPN, with the private sectors and also with experts, NGOs like Sumatra Heritage Trust. So thank you very much. And we also have Emil Leshuis in the group, who wrote books about heritage trails in Indonesian, in the historical areas of Indonesia, including Medan. Emil, are you still with us? Would you like to share something about what you research, including in Medan, about plantation?
Yes, Hasti, can you hear me?
Yes, please introduce yourself because there are many new people.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Emil Leushuis. I'm from the Netherlands and I am in the Netherlands at the moment. I'm very pleased to join this meeting. I missed the first part because I had a little bit of trouble getting into the, anyway, it worked out in the end. It was very interesting. Thank you, Soedjai, for your introduction as well. Let me say, I'm actually, my work is in the travel business. So I have a small travel company and we try to send Dutch travelers to Indonesia on an individual base, so small scale travel to Indonesia. And one of our interests is heritage travel or heritage items, heritage related travel. And that's one of the reasons why I started to collect all this information about different heritage cities in Indonesia and try to sort of make it more presented in a way that it's interesting and easy for Dutch tourists when they go to Indonesia to actually find their way around these heritage cities. It was not so easy in the 1990s and in the beginning of the 2000s, and it's improved a lot, and also to understand what they're actually looking at. So I was trying to sort of explain the whole history. One of the cities in the book is Medan, and I started doing some research, and actually I used the book that was written by Mr. Buiskol, like way before I published my book, a lot. It was very interesting, and I used that as part of the research as well. I remember I also climbed the AFROS building up to the bell tower at that time. It was not open to the public at that time yet, but I was able to get in. It was very interesting to see. So I'm very eager actually to go there again to see what the museum looks like now at the moment. Actually, it was one of my questions probably to the director of the museum, I think Ibu Sri, if I is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, correct. And by the way, do you have your book next to you? Maybe you can show the cover.
Okay, hang on. I have to walk away for a second then.
Especially the younger generations will see. And I also would like to welcome Margaret Leidel-Meyer, who wrote this book. But anyway, now Emil come back. I will come back to you, Margaret, later. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's.
You see it? I cannot see myself. So.
Bahasa, right?
The one in Dutch. There's also been a translation. Pardon?
No, that is.
Nog steeds bezig.
There was also a translation sponsored by BPPI a couple of years ago in Indonesian, but I'm not sure whether it's still available. I don't think anymore, because it was only a limited edition that was published at that time. So my question was actually, is there any interest from foreign tourists for the two museum sites that are open now? Is it already, I mean, are you working together with travel agents from foreigners that visit the museums? Or are you planning to do something with that?
Please, Ibu Sri or someone who represents Musperin, could you please answer?
Halo, Ibu Asti.
Yes. Bagaimana, Bu?
Halo, Ibu.
Ya, bagaimana
Halo,
sebaiknya, Bu? Ibu, Pak Emil bicara bahasa Indonesia. So I apologize for Dutch participants. A few minutes between Ibu Sri and Emil will be in bahasa probably. I will translate later. Please go ahead.
Terima kasih Ibu Asti. Karena ini adalah juga dua negara, jadi saya bisa pakai bahasa Indonesia.
Nanti Ibu bisa. Dan Emil mengerti bahasa Indonesia.
Dan mengerti bahasa Indonesia. Jadi tadi yang ditanya, maaf Bu Asti tadi.
Bagaimana usaha Musperin untuk menarik wisatawan asing, Bu?
Musperin selama ini kerjasama dengan beberapa travel agent bekerja sama untuk membawa turis-turis berkunjung ke museum. Ya, kerjasama yang dilakukan adalah dengan memberikan tarif-tarif khusus ketika turis-turis asing itu sedang berkunjung ke museum. Kita bekerja sama dengan guiding-guiding dari travel-travel tersebut. Ini adalah untuk turis. Kemudian juga kita lakukan dengan melakukan promosi-promosi di hotel-hotel agar supaya tamu-tamu asing bisa juga berkunjung ke museum. Kita memberikan beberapa buklet-buklet tentang museum, kemudian juga tentang informasi-informasi tentang museum kepada hotel-hotel. Ini adalah untuk promosi kepada turis, dan kemudian kita juga mengikuti memberikan untuk di masa pandemi ini kita melakukan promosi dengan virtual tour, kemudian juga dengan Instagram, dengan Facebook kita lakukan untuk promosi-promosi. Itu Bu Hasti untuk promosi tentang Museum Perkebunan Indonesia. Dan ini juga sebagai tambahan, tadi menambahi mungkin apa yang diterangkan oleh Badan Warisan Sumatera. Kami berterima kasih kepada Badan Warisan Sumatera yang telah mendampingi untuk restorasi gedung Museum Perkebunan Indonesia II. Terima kasih, Bu Hasti.
Ya, terima kasih. Ibu Sui, nanti mungkin Emil kalau di Indonesia bisa membantu mengembangkan program-program untuk turis asing, misalnya berkunjung ke bekas-bekas perkebunan dan sebagainya kalau pandemi sudah berlalu. So I think I will quickly mention some points for our Dutch friends. Is that the museums work together with travel agents and hotels to attract foreign tourists, and also during the pandemic organized virtual tour, and also very active in social media. And the museum is very happy to cooperate with Sumatra Heritage Trust for restorations of the buildings. So I think that's thank you, Emil. And I think yes, please, please.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. So the program Achter de Dijken has been made the recordings in the museum, so you can see that. And it was 1.5 years ago. It was before 2 years ago. It was done, I think.
Okay.
So you can see Achter de Dijken, and then you see the shootings. Was Leo Blokhuis was the presenter.
Leo Blokhuis.
Leo Blokhuis, and it was so you can see the museum, the second museum from inside, is in interesting discussions about the plantation history.
This is the documentary.
So I think it's good.
This is the documentary film in the Dutch television, right?
Achter de Dijken. So I think you can see that online. You can do that. So you can see the museum from inside, and you also Mr. Soedjai has been interviewed, if I remember well.
Okay.
So you can. It's an interesting program, and about the tourists visiting. We are also in the travel industry, my wife and I, and we at the moment there is no tourists can come in. There is no visa. There's no tourist visa. It's impossible to visit anyway. But we also stimulated to go if we have guests, because we also had in the past so many guests who looking for the places for the parents and the grandparents, the great grandparents, and all plantation, and all hospitals, Japanese camps, the whole story of Sumatra, of East Sumatra and this area. Like Emil said, is that people are looking for those places.
Yes.
And that's
keeping,
so we really stimulated to go to the museum if the tourists will come back again. Yes,
keeping the hope that the pandemic will be soon over. But since we have time for discussions, if you don't mind, I would like to invite Margaret Ledel-Meyer. Hi, Margaret. Is the writer of this book, Plantation in the Dutch Indies in the long 19th century, which I read enjoyable to learn about the history. Would you like to share some, would you like to introduce yourselves and also to share some of your views about this history, Margaret?
Okay. Good evening.
Maybe introduce yourselves, yeah.
Yes, okay. Good evening and good afternoon. I'm Margaret Leidelmeijer, and I wrote this book some 8 years ago. It's already a long time ago I wrote that, because at that time there was an exhibition in Arnhem about the story of the Netherlands East Indies. And one part was about the plantations in the 19th century. I did my education in Wageningen. I'm also an engineer from Wageningen. And during my study, I did a lot of projects about PTP's and the sugar industry and rubber industry. And after that, I went to Eindhoven University of Technology, and I did research about the sugar technology in the 19th century, about processes of diffusion of technology from the West to Indonesia. Yeah, what do I have to talk about, Hasti?
Yeah, about the plantation history, whether it's still alive or it's dimming, forgetting.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's booming, only as you see.
Yeah, it's. I'm not very busy now at this moment with the plantation because I'm more engaged with the Second World War at this moment, and with the Indies heritage from people who came from Indonesia to the Netherlands. But it's, yeah, I don't know if it's very, I think it's interesting for the people whose ancestors worked at the plantations. And I think there will be much interest of those people to come, if it's possible again, to come to Medan or to the plantations, because it's a bit history that it's not so much in the under the intention of people. And I think if you, I saw those projects you did, Hasti, and I thought it was very interesting because when you have a museum there and all kinds of heritage things, I think people are more willing to go there. And in Miel, yeah, you did heritage journeys. I think if you organize this well with all kinds of historic tales, or then I think you can have a large public to make them enthusiastic to go there.
Yes, I agree with you. That's why we have webinars today as a first step, because I have studied a little bit about the history of plantations. It's overwhelming in both countries.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy. We are so happy to see how enthusiastic Indonesians about this, and I hope so also from the Dutch sides.
Yes.
I think that's what's amazing about shared history. Instead of each party is busy not knowing each other, I think it's always good to communicate and to exchange informations about what we are busy.
Yes.
And who knows that one day you can further research about plantation history together with the Indonesians. When
I would like to
travel to Medan, to Sumatra.
Yeah, I was planning to go to Sumatra in 2020, but because of the COVID, it wasn't possible. So
yes.
Yeah.
And I also have to mention that you are part of the Indies Herinnering Centrum. Probably you can tell a bit about that, because there are many Indonesians now in this webinar, which it's very important for Indonesia to know about this in these institutions. Please.
About the Indies Commemoration Center.
Yes.
We are a commemoration center of the Second World War, and we keep the memory of that period alive, not only from the Second World War, but also for the migration from Indonesia to the Netherlands and the way the people were ontvangst, recepted, in the Netherlands, and how they integrated into Dutch society. And until now, especially with the second and third generation, there is very much interest in their past. A lot of people are tracing their roots, and therefore it's very interesting for a lot of people who are working at the plantations, and the second and third generation are looking for their identity, and they wanted to see where they're from, and they wanted to see how their parents or grandparents lived in Indonesia. And I think if we had a more cooperation or collaboration, then I think that will be very wonderful, because we can learn a lot from you. And in February, we will open up an exhibition about, it's named Our Country, Decolonization, Generations, and Families. And we trace back the history of 8 families who now are living in the Netherlands. And we trace back the history when we start in the present days, and we go back to the time they were the first years in the Netherlands, and then we go back to the migration from Indonesia to the Netherlands, and then we go back to the colonial times. And so you can go from the present to the past, so the people can go along in the history, in the story. So and then it's personal. There's personal stories, and I think when in an exhibition, when you make the history more personal, more people will come to visit it, because it's easier to understand the story than if you only talk about large structures or large only the unpersonal things. It's important, but if you give a face to the history, people are more involved, and I think that will be that will be very good. If we also have Indonesian stories, then you have stories from both sides. So.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
So, for the Indonesian parties, when you visit Netherlands, probably you should visit the Indies Commemoration Center in The Hague. It's a very beautiful building. Pak Soedjai, would you like to comment so far with all these inputs and feedbacks from the Dutch sides? Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you very much, Hasti.
For your informations, and hopefully this is not the last time we communicate.
No, I don't think so.
Would you do you have a comments or impressions, Pak Soedjai? Would you like to share with us so far?
Well, I always told my Dutch friends that different perspectives. I considered that the Dutch did a lot of good business in East Sumatra, but the present generation always make the following comments. Well, they became rich because they used slaves. I told them, no, not at all. I have been facing this question in many conferences in London, in Frankfurt, and in Hamburg. Always, young people always ask me, was it true that the Dutch were using slaves? No, I said no, not at all. Of course, there were people who, let me tell you the truth, just to please the Chinese laborers, opium was sold to them, you know. That's why some people have become rich, because of selling opium to the Chinese laborers. That was the wrong thing that they do. But we learned a lot of things from them, like good practices and so forth. So again, different perspectives, different opinions.
Thank you.
That's my answer.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Soedjai. But history is history, and I think although we do not encourage people to smoke, but the fact that Deli Tobacco used to be one of the best tobacco in the world, together with Cuba, was a kind of achievement that we can withdraw the lesson learned, especially for younger generations and also other plantation commodities. So we try to be positive to learn from the history, and that's why we share. I think that's the idea, Pak Soedjai.
Look, I've been for 10 years. I've been involved in the tobacco industry for 10 years, for the last 10 years, from 2000 to 2010. I was always in Hamburg, invited by the German as well as by the Indonesian government to be present during sales of tobacco leaves at in Bremen. But I've met people from different countries there. The only bad comment I had was that what they were saying in 2007, when the tobacco was very good indeed. The comment from the gentleman from the United States was, well, you know, it's very of high quality, very good indeed. But you Indonesians, you know, if they are willing, if they are serious, they can do it. So that was a sarcastic comment.
Yes.
And I said, no, that's not true. So always doing our best to produce the best leaves to sell here in Bremen. So different views indeed.
Yes, thank you very much. I invite if is there any of the participants would like to ask questions or share feedbacks or the update with the latest informations. People from plantations industry, because I saw many of participants also involved in plantation industry now. Or is there any update from Indonesia? Welcome. Or maybe Indonesians are also welcome if you would like to share something. Otherwise, I invite Pak Khairul.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I? Yes.
Please introduce yourself, Pak Atik.
Yes. Thank you very much indeed for this occasion. Actually, I would like to put forward a suggestion in Bahasa Indonesia.
Could you mention could you introduce yourself first?
Yes. I have been working for the tea industry since 1977 up to 2009. I was working for the Research Institute for Tea and Sinkona in Gambung, Bandung, Indonesia. This institute was built in 1973 due to the support from the Dutch government. And from 2009 up to now, I was still working for the Indonesia Tea Association based in Bandung. Well, actually in Indonesia, we have the so-called proof station where I was working there. And this proof station, quite famous. It was written in a book written by Mrs. Hella Hasse. That the book was entitled Heren van de Tea. Well, actually, it is different what I'm going to say in this occasion. I would like to propose whether in museum in Jalan Brigjen Katamso in Medan, it is not only for the exhibition of a museum, but I would like to propose in the space we have in that Musperin to be used as an exhibition area, especially for the estate crops, either for coffee, tea, cacao, rubber, and so forth. So maybe we can make a kind of periodic occasion. Maybe for the time being, we can do it through the virtual exhibition, but after the COVID over, we can do it physically. So that is my suggestion. Of course, it can be supported by the Erasmus Hoist in Jakarta. I was also alumni from the Wageningen International Agrari Centrum in Lawik Seale, Wageningen.
Yes.
40 years ago. 40 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Vielen Dank.
So I think this webinar is indirectly also is kind of a reunion of Wageningen alumni. Yeah? There are many of alumni of Wageningen. It's very, and of course the history of tea is very important. Everyone who read a bit about history of plantations admit how important the tea. And Ibu Sri Hartini and Pak Soedjai are here, so they might consider your input. Ya Ibu Sri, tentang sejarah teh akan dimasukkan juga di Musperin. Yes, Ibu Sri mengangguk-mengangguk ya. Okay. I give one last chance. If anyone has urgent question, otherwise maybe I invite Ibu Wiwi to share about the informations about how you can require the PowerPoint of Pak Soedjai and other materials related to the plantation history, which we share with all of you, and also informations about email address of Pak Soedjai if you would like to contact Pak Soedjai directly to his email. I can invite Ibu Wiwi to about Google Classroom.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Ibu Hasti, and thank you to all participants and to the beautiful presentation of Pak Soedjai as well. The Google Classroom, I think we can email that to you, or otherwise Mbak Rara can share it in the chat.
Okay. Yeah.
Already done that?
Yeah.
So, and I also would like to thank Dirk Buikschool for the link for the video about After the Dijken, and I will include that as well in the Google Classroom.
Yes.
And,
thank you, Wiwi.
Okay.
Indonesian diaspora. So for all participants, the PowerPoints, the materials, and contact informations are in the link of the Google Classrooms in the chat. You can copy paste. And thank you very much, Pak Soedjai Kartasasmita, the whole team of Indonesian plantation museums, all participants. I cannot mention one by one, and for sharing this afternoon. It is a tiny effort to bridge the communication between two countries who share history. But hopefully this tiny effort would lead to something more useful, bigger in the future. And who knows, all of you personally also can contact each other in the near future. Thank you very much. And this webinar to bridge between two countries is organized every month, the third Wednesday of each month, the same time. And the next month topic is about restorations of old building in Jakarta. It will be held in the 17th of November at the same time. Hopefully that all of you will join. Check our social media, Livable Cities Indonesian Diaspora Networks. Thank you very much, and I apologize to Pak Soedjai and to all participants if not everyone are accommodated with the questions during the discussions program. We don't organize a picture session because no, yeah, that is the agreement from the beginning. We appreciate the privacy of all participants, and yeah. And Pak Soedjai, probably because we say goodbye, please say something to all of us, to all your children in Netherlands, in Indonesia, before we say goodbye or see you again, maybe. Pak Soedjai, please go ahead.
Ik zal eerst in het Hollands praten.
Yes, alsjeblieft. Alsjeblieft, ja.
Nou, ik zou u graag willen bedanken voor deze interessante webinar.
Ja.
En ik hoop dat ik ook mee kan doen aan de volgende webinar. Het is zo belangrijk voor de plantage-industrie om van gedachten te wisselen over het verleden van de plantage-industrie in Noord-Sumatra en ook in Java, voor suiker bijvoorbeeld. Ik ben ook expert in de suikerindustrie. Ik heb een erkenning gekregen van de internationale industrie. En we kunnen praten over suiker in Oost-Java. Want dat was ook geweldig. Let me talk now in English. So we should not limit our talks to plantation crops only, but also to sugarcane, for instance, which in the past has such a great history, especially after the Dutch started with growing sugarcane in various parts of Java. And Java became one of the biggest producers of sugar in the past. Not anymore now. But even at that time, they were inclined to involve the farmers also, local farmers. And that's a good lesson for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Soedjai.
So that means that next time you should also talk about this.
Yes.
It made the history of the plantation industry so great in the past.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's so great to hear that you speak Dutch. And there are some Dutch institutions in this webinar, so probably they will organize and invite you as a speaker, and you can give presentation in Dutch about sugar history plantations later. I invite Margaret and everybody probably to think about it in the future. Thank you. Heel veel bedankt, Pak Soedjai. And we hope that you and your family and the whole family of Musperin stay in the good health. Thank you very much. And to all participants, thank you and stay healthy. Thank you very much. Thank you. And don't forget to check the Google Classroom. Thank you. Bye.